Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today is going to be a little bit of real talk and it can be very triggering for some people. So if this is a hard subject for you, please click off. But I am going to be talking about my mum's death in this video. And if you decide to continue to watch, I am doing this to raise awareness of this subject and to also help other people who are going through this too. My mum's name was Marcia. She was very strong and she was a beautiful and loving, caring woman. She would do anything for anyone, and I am so lucky to be her daughter. I want to raise awareness of this subject because this is how my mum passed away, and I don't want it to happen to anybody else. But basically, what happened was she was on gabapentin and she was in a lot of pain, and she was taking this medication thinking that it wasn't working. Gabapentin takes a long time to kick in, and she thought that it wasn't working and was taking a lot more than she should have. On the night of September the 9th, 2015, I was 22 years old. So was my twin, of course, we're twins. She was supposed to go out with her friend. Her friend didn't get any answers from my mum's phone, and she tried to contact her. It wasn't like my mum to not answer and to not go out on a night out because she loved to party. My mum's friend turned up at her house. On my mum's door, she has a gate, and that gets locked over the actual door to stop any burglaries and stuff. That was locked, and then my mum's friend began to get concerned and was banging on the door and phoning her phone, and there was no answer at all, and she was very worried. So she then took to her phone and called the police. The police turned up, they couldn't get an answer, and that was then when the landlord turned up. He must have got a call off someone who was concerned about the police turning up at my mum's door. The landlord handed them the key and they got into the house. That was then when they found my mum, and she was laying on the couch with her arm down. She had half of a biscuit in her hand and a cup of coffee that was on the floor, and a pack of biscuits that were laying half empty on the table. She, of course, was deceased. We did not find out till midnight that night. I didn't even know yet, and I had a painting that coincidentally I was drawing for my mum, and it had a collage of pictures, and it was beautiful, and I was going to give it to her because I loved my mum and I wanted her to have that hung up in her house because it would have been lovely. So at the time I was doing that, my nan received a phone call from the police. At that time, my mum had been experiencing a lot of mental health problems, and I thought it was something to do with that. So, something inside me was telling me that something wasn't right. I didn't know at the time that my mum had passed away, but I knew something was happening. I knew in my heart, I could feel it. So when my nan received this phone call, I walked into the room and they would not tell us anything until a coroner, I think they're called a coroner, I can't remember, came out to tell us what was going on. So of course my worry was up the wall and I broke down to my auntie on the phone. And that was when my auntie rushed over because she knew that something was going on too. Now, I was trying to tell myself that there's nothing going on with my mum, and I was very, very worried. But then I was going through the motions too. I'm sitting there thinking the worst, and I was so mad because I wanted to phone her and tell her how angry I was that she made us feel this way, that she made us feel worried and thinking that all kinds had happened to her. And I think that was because deep inside I knew, and I just couldn't stop crying, and we were begging the police to tell us, but of course protocol, they couldn't tell us. So about an hour later there is a knock at the door, and I'll never ever forget this moment actually, because it really, really stays with me. It's stuck in my head. So there was a knock at the door, and me and my twin ran downstairs to open the door, and it was the coroner. Then my Auntie Margaret came down the stairs. My nan came down the stairs, and the coroner took us into the living room. My Auntie Margaret at the time had a bowl of cereal in her hands, and that was when the coroner turned around, looked at my nan, and she said, "Unfortunately, your daughter has passed away." It still hurts to this day. I instantly had the worst reaction. I turned to my auntie, she dropped the bowl of cereal all over the floor, and I just ran. I don't know where I was gonna go, but in that moment I wanted my mum, and I just ran out the door and ran up the street, and then I collapsed onto the floor. I couldn't even make it up the road, and I just screamed this horrible scream, and it took my auntie a long time to get me back into the house. It wasn't a nice thing to go through. So as soon as I got back into the house, I noticed that my twin was in denial. She didn't believe it at all, and a part of me wanted to not believe it, but I knew because it was my mum's house and it couldn't have been anybody else. That night I collapsed on the floor, and I can just remember all my tears and TMI snot just all over my bedroom floor, and I was screaming for my mum. It was like I'd reverted to a newborn baby, and I was screaming for my mum, and I will never forget it. So after that, my grandma on my dad's side and my dad came to my nan's to comfort us, and I do remember sitting there and asking my grandma how did she cope, after her mum passed away, because I was looking to my wise grandma for advice because I was that upset. It felt like the world was ended in that moment. And I also remember that I don't have sugar in my cups of tea, and my dad made me a cup of tea with sugar in it, and I was shaking like a leaf. I was like this. And I remember turning around and saying to my dad, I don't have sugar in my tea. And my dad said, it's for the shock. It was something that you just don't expect. My mum was full of life. She was in her prime. Her kids had grew up, and she was just back out and happy and living a life. I never ever knew that life would be like this. I never thought that my mum would pass away. I always thought she'd grow old and I'd be taking care of her. And I wish that was the case, because I wanted to build a lot of memories with her. She was only 41, turning 42. It shouldn't have been the case. I know this has been a sad one, guys, and I'm sorry. I'm now going to end the video with a little montage of my mum. And once again, I thank you for watching this video.
No one else could have